Okay, well, we're officially recording. Going to get this party started, like I said a minute ago. Thanks for everyone for being here. I know we kind of threw this together at the last minute, but I'm really glad this evening worked out for a bunch of people to be here. And we are streaming to Facebook Live, so anyone who just scrolls that didn't happen to register with the Zoom link can still, here's one more person, can still see us, get the links that we're going to do, and do this. So we have three awesome candidates here tonight. I mean, they're really three of our favorites. Running for CD8, which is my district. We have Jen Schultz, who's here in her adorable hat. I love that.
No.
Oh,
Nice.
Try to mute people.
Nice. She's, oh, I was going to say, she's nice. You guys know. Hello there.
All right. Sorry about that. Sorry, where was I? And which I love the hat. Are you going to go and we're going to do our first is how to start with Jen in a minute. She has to go do some dorm door knocking, and I really hope you're going to wear that hat while you go. Great. Then in 57A, we have our chair emeritus of the caucus as well. Veda Kanitz is running down in Lakeville. I don't think I've seen anyone with as strong of a door knocking game in my 10 or 12 years involved in the DFL as she's been out there. She's probably getting like 20,000 steps in a day. And then up from my neck of the woods where I work in 2A, even though I live in 3A, we have Reed Olson here, who's, it's an open seat. And we're really excited because his opponent is not good and Reed is amazing. So we're going to get it started off here with just some introductions. I know Jen's got to run in about 15 minutes to go do her door knocking. So we'll I'm thinking we'll just do, each candidate can do their own introduction for just a couple of minutes if you want to keep it short. And then we'll let Jen do whatever shtick she wants. And any kind of questions that have come in for her, we'll just do and make sure she's off so she can go make sure that some college students get to the polls next week. So Jen, you want to start with an introduction?
Sure. Happy Halloween, everyone. It's great to see y'all. Oh boy, the election is going to happen next Tuesday. I'm so excited. We're doing very well. The race is going to be very close. We had our only debate on Tuesday night, and I thought it went well. I was very nervous, but I had a solo debate on Hibbing public access, which was really great. It was just me answering lots of questions for 50 minutes. And we're putting a lot of content on social media. We're knocking thousands of doors, as are the other candidates. So there's a huge grassroots movement. I wish we had more time to door knock because I feel our campaign is really hitting its stride and could probably get more votes if we could knock more doors and let people know who Stauber is. We have ads up. We're gonna have print ads in all the newspapers. We were endorsed by 8 of the largest conservative newspapers in the district and got the endorsement from most of the labor unions. And we're endorsed by the DFL Environmental Caucus. So thank you all for that. Again, I teach at UMD, my day job. I'm a former state legislator. I was a Great Lakes Commissioner for 8 years, and I got a lot of great things done. My background is healthcare policy, and besides working on affordable healthcare, I was on the tax committee, closed corporate tax loopholes, and expanded affordable health coverage. Got every infrastructure bonding bill for my district in my 8-year career with bipartisan support. I only served in the divided government. And I'm excited to be here tonight to answer questions and talk about my views on the environment and why we need to unseat Pete to save our environment and our district. So I will stop there and let other people introduce themselves.
And I'll try to find the link to that WDIO debate. What was it, last night or the night before? I can't remember. I forewent watching a good chunk of the World Series to watch that, as well as Kamala's closing argument debate. So Pete was once upon a time seemed like a formidable opponent. He is not. anymore at all, or maybe he just was never, and it's really coming to the surface. But I'll try to find it and link to it so you guys can see what a great job Jen did there. Okay, let's move on to Veda Kanitz. If you'd like to introduce yourself for a minute.
Thank you. Am I unmuted? Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, it's awesome to see you all here tonight and to be on with Jen and Reed, two of my favorite candidates. I really feel like you're going to do it, Jen. I'm seeing you everywhere with all your posts and all the groups that have been out for you. And it's very, very exciting. And I'm also hearing excellent things about Reed. And I'm very honored to be here with you tonight. I also need to reach out to the DFL Environmental Caucus and all the environmentalists in our state. And thank you, thank you. Your support of my campaign has been tremendous. Donations and support has come in from all over the state, well before people in Lakeville really knew too much about me. And that's been just absolutely just made me feel awesome, regardless of the outcome. I am running in a very red district, which some might wonder, why are you doing that, Veda, right? It's not like I didn't have plenty to do being involved in many different DFL groups and formerly teaching full-time, but I'm running because my district deserves better leadership, and so does our state. We need someone who will actually put their votes behind what they say, someone who does support our public schools and will vote for things that are going to help increase the quality of our education and keep our teachers. We need someone who truly cares about the environment and will think about how decisions made today will affect future generations. We have a lot of beautiful lakes in our district, and many of them are highly eutrophic, nutrient rich, and suffering from climate change, just like everything else, right? We have the Vermilion River here, which Debbie and I have been cleaning up for the past, 15, 16 years, right? Picking up trash along the river and in the river. And we know that these treasured resources are not going to be here for our kids and grandkids, right? It won't be a trout stream if we don't act on climate. So I was very proud to get the endorsement of groups like Clean Water Action and the Environmental Caucus and the Climate Cabinet and even Jane Fonda's Climate PAC, which is very, very cool to me, right? I got to go out and buy a red coat, I think. But again, I'm thrilled to be here and I'm very honored and again, grateful for all the support I've received.
Thank you so much, Veda. She's been working her little tail off. And then let's go to Reed Olson, who's up here in my neck of the woods in 2A.
Good evening, everybody. Bonjour. I'm Reed Olson. I'm running for House seat 2A, which goes from Bemidji up straight north to the northwest angle. So it's a pretty big district, not the largest by any means, but probably in the top 5. I live in Bemidji. I am a small business owner. I own a small restaurant with a friend of mine. Today's Halloween. Yeah, today is our 19th anniversary of our business. So, and yesterday was my 49th birthday. So I turned 30 on a Sunday, and we opened our business on a Monday, the next Monday. So, we've been in business for a while here. I stepped away from the business about 5 years ago and became the executive director of the Nameless Coalition for the Homeless. Up to that point, I had been its chair since we were founded in 2015. So I run 2 homeless shelters in Bemidji, 1 overnight shelter and 1 day center. I've been doing that work for about as long as I've been in elected office, so about 12 years or so altogether. Really enjoy the work. I've been a city council member for 4 years here in Bemidji, and I was 6 years a county commissioner. I ran against Matt Grossel last cycle and came a little bit short. And I am very hopeful that with this open seat and with the presidential election going on and Amy Klobuchar being on the ballot and Jen Schultz being on the ballot, that we've got a lot of Tim Sumner running for county commission up in Red Lake. So there's a lot of things that are going to bring people out to the polls. And yeah, as Megan kind of mentioned, I have a uniquely unsavory, well, there's a second cycle in a row. The GOP up here really made a lateral move when they replaced Grossel with Badal Duran, a real problematic individual. So I'm hoping we can take advantage of his yeah, problems or whatever, his lack of popularity, and I really think we're going to see a huge turnout up in Red Lake and here in Bemidji, and that should be enough to get me over the finish line. But it's going to be a very close race, and it really is going to come down to voter turnout. So we've got a few days to really excite people to get out. I was just at a treat street tonight that was really great because I got to talk to a lot of low information, voters that are really busy young parents that don't have a lot of time to focus on down ballot elections. So it was really nice to get in front of people. But I'll stop there because I know we want to give Jen some time to talk. So thank you all for this opportunity. I'm excited to have a conversation with you all tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Yes, there was a ton of Reed Olson signs around town. Some more Duran signs are popping up, but I think you still are ahead of the sign game. And what's great around Bemidji is I'm seeing a lot of Harris Wall signs. I'm sorry, Reed, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say really quickly, my opponent, most of his signs are in front of businesses and empty lots. Mine are in front of people's homes.
That is true. You're driving down the streets of the neighborhood, that's where his are, not just on random causeways or whatever. Okay, Jen, let's just start off. We can do a few things. What do you think would be your biggest environmental goal for CD8 when you're elected to Congress?
Thanks for that. I'm trying to get my son out the door for trick-or-treating. My biggest goal when I'm elected, well, the first thing I want to do is build relationships with everyone across the aisle to get things done. The second thing that I want to do is work on campaign finance reform so we can do big things with the environment. I think money in politics has been a huge barrier to get anything done in DC. There's been so much chaos and dysfunction. So those are two big goals, and then figure out when I'm elected which committees I'll have. And I think the committees, my preference right now would be transportation and education workforce to work on healthcare reform, and then Indian affairs because we have 7 tribes in this district and they want representation. The big goal, we need to look at how we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, move away from that, and figure out how we can reduce our carbon output and try to slow down global warming. I'm very concerned. We can see the weather effects right now, and some people tell me it's almost too late. I'm more of an optimist. So I hope we can do that and transition more to green energy. The problem I see right now is that we are using more energy as we make more energy, green or otherwise. So we need to reduce our consumption. And that when what's driving that is use of computers for crypto and artificial intelligence and how much computers energy they use. But I'll stop there and take the next question so we can get through more.
Thank you. I'm just doing the ones so far that have come in prior. So if any of you guys have ones that you want to do, just send them to me or Greg in the chat. We can ask. Okay, so this is always fun. And Greg, this is one that you sent in early. Maybe you just want to ask it.
Yeah, I was just interested in the dynamics, Jen, in your race of the up and down ballot. And Reed mentioned something about this, but just you've got, the old days, the president, everyone had coattails and we'd all ride on the coattails, but that's not true so much anymore. And you're right in the middle. You have a senator, you have a presidential race, you have local races. How is the up and down ballot dynamics helping you, and how is that going this year?
Well, it's going to help that it's a presidential and that we're going to see more turnout, and we don't have to work as hard to get our core base voters to turn out, core DFL. So we can focus on more persuasion and leans and to get them to vote for us and talk about Stauber. when our volunteers that are at the door early on to do persuasion, they were just pointing out my strengths and my opponent's weaknesses to get them to vote, regardless of who else they voted for on the ballot. And having Amy Klobuchar, she her last elections has won every county. She will help us on the race as well. And then down ballot, we have all of these wonderful House candidates, really great candidates working really hard to do persuasion and turnout and to flip districts to DFL. They're all helping everyone up the ballot. So I'm excited about that effect. But my opponent is very vulnerable. And I know that even on Twitter, people I've met that are supporting Trump are upset with Stauber for his lack of accomplishments and his being lying about supporting that huge infrastructure bill that brought billions of money, funds and jobs to our district. So they know that I have a strong record of getting things done. On my last state election, over 70% of the people voted for me. And so I had a lot of Republican support, and they're aware of that. So I think that's why it's going to be close. That's why you see Stauber trying to get to every county before the election, because I think he's worried.
Thanks, Jen. And this is something we'll bring up later too with Veda and Reed, but it's everyone's favorite question on transportation. So CD8 is unique. It is larger than the size of 10 states, I believe. It encompasses everything from a fairly decent sized city like Duluth to somewhere like where I live in International Towns Falls, with a town of 5,000 people, or in Baudette for a town of 1,000 people, or in Bagley, another town of 1,000 people, all places I am regularly in. So considering the different needs of this diverse district, what kind of clean transportation solutions would you think would be helpful?
Okay, great question. So this district is the size of the state of West Virginia. So it is very large. It goes all the way from Lake of the Woods all the way down to north of Stillwater. It has 2 precincts in Stillwater, north of Stillwater. So I've already put on over 70,000 miles on my car. The average person in the district drives 25 miles to work. And people have to drive great distances even to get the healthcare they need, which needs to be addressed. But so that's why gas prices are one of the top issues for folks. And when I went to the 2 high schools, the Proctor and Cloquet, to talk to students, I asked them what their top issues are, and a lot of them mentioned gas prices because that's what they see every day. Most of them are working part-time jobs and driving to those jobs. So we have to figure out transportation. I know in Bemidji, they don't even have a public transit system, busing. We need to have more options like that. I know we have Arrowhead Transit that's doing a great job. That needs to be available, something like that across the entire district for public transportation, and for folks that don't have a car or no longer drive, like older adults, to get to healthcare appointments. So we have to figure out ways to make vehicles like electric vehicles more affordable. They're very expensive, and bring down, and that will help us bring down the reliance on fossil fuels.
It helps if I unmute myself. Thank you, Jen. I do have one question that's a follow-up to something you said earlier. Could you give us a little bit more elaboration on the building relationships, given the divide that's currently in Congress?
Well, I'm hoping people will elect more moderate folks, people who are willing to work within the government institutions and want to do good things using within the government infrastructure. So hopefully on Tuesday, those folks will get elected, and we will sort of reduce the amount of polarization. And the people we have in office, so many of the Republicans contribute to that polarization and using fear and anger and hate to divide us. And I've really noticed that in our communities have become very divided. people don't want to talk about politics anymore. A lot of them can't even talk to family members or their neighbors because they're worried it may go into politics and they're not comfortable there. And they're very sick of the division and they want to really move forward in a different direction. And so we need to elect leaders that can lead in that way and not lead with anger and hate, but lead with a positive vision for the future and work on addressing that polarization. So I know that when I was in the Minnesota House, I worked with Republicans. There was a group of new Republicans that were a little bit more to the right of the Republicans and formed their own caucus. I worked with libertarians and independents. So I already know that I'm able to find common ground on some issue where we agree, and we may not agree on everything, but what's really important is to get to know folks and find out where you do have agreement and then work on those issues. And I think that will be helpful to do and not be so play the political theater card and try to get media attention by being so extreme. We just need folks that want to get elected to do the hard work of being a public servant and putting in the time and energy in doing that rather than getting more likes or subscribers on their social media accounts.
Thanks so much, Jen. So I know you've got a door knock coming up soon, so I don't want to hold you up. Just wonder, is there any last things you want to talk to us about? What's going to get, is there any kind of get out the vote rally, or not rallies, door knocks or phone banks you're doing over the weekend or leading up to election day?
Yeah, we have a meet and greet coming up in Sandstone, and that's Friday night, and that's at 4:30 at El Mexico Restaurant. So people can come. It's open to the public to get to know me and to ask questions. And then on mobilize.us, people can find out where all the door knocks are. We're in the coordinated campaign part of the season, and so all the door knocks are listed there, and you can door knock for everyone on the ballot in your district. So I encourage you to go to mobilize.us and find out where we can help. I just want to thank everybody. I know a lot of folks are doing a lot of work volunteering for candidates and for door knocking, phone banking. I know we've sent out over 35,000 handwritten postcards. Thank all of you for doing that for your candidates. It's really important. And for those who wrote letters to the editor, thank you so much. We couldn't do this without our volunteers and supporters. So thanks all. And thanks for our candidates for running. It's not easy and you're putting yourself out there and I really appreciate it. So thanks everyone. Happy Halloween again. And I'm sure I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jen. Happy Halloween. That's great. So I'll keep putting links up in the chat. So will Greg, and we'll be putting them on the comments and Facebook Live too. So you guys can keep going. And as I mentioned before, and I put in the chat, we are going to do donation matches to our candidates. So we're going to do a up to $500 donation match for Jen Schultz and up to $300 for Veda, Kanitz, and Reed Olson. So every little bit helps going into these last days. There's doors to knock, there's streets to drive, there's lit to drop, you name it. And elections aren't free. So anyway, let's get on to our two state house candidates that we love so much. So let's go to, this is a question for both of you, and either one can answer first. You guys are both in tough districts. I know Veda's is pretty red and Reed's has typically been red depending on what part of the district you're in. Bemidji, Red Lake, you're okay, but the further north you get and the west you get, it's a little tougher. Knowing that, how are you going through this and just running the hardest campaigns, you know, some of us have ever seen? How are you two dealing with that challenge?
Well, I lost last cycle by about 1,400 votes, which was about 8.5%. When we have a high turnout in Bemidji and Red Lake, we will win, which I think we're going to have now. So I have been really investing a lot of time up in Red Lake. I believe we're going to get close to 3,000 votes off of the reservation. which will really help me out. And I think we're going to see a lot higher numbers here in Bemidji. And I can say, this is I mean, everything is anecdotal. We don't really have, any polling data or anything. I don't know if you would have noticed, but there was, I was the feature of a NPR story yesterday, my opponent and I, and they interviewed a political science professor here in Bemidji that basically said I didn't have a chance in hell. And I just would say that he teaches poli-sci 101. He is not an elections expert. I don't know why they asked him. He's never talked to me about the race. He knows nothing about the race. So I was surprised. A lot of people have written us off as it just being too red, but I think that's because they were looking at last year's race and just using that as a guide. Turnout in Bemidji was really abysmal, as it was in Red Lake. Just in our district was a real outlier compared to the rest of the nation, where the Democrats. Remember, we were told that there was going to be the red wave, and then we staunched it, and there really wasn't a wave. But for whatever reason, around here, we saw 80% turnout amongst Republicans and below 40% turnout overall from Democrats. So if we can get up to about a 70% turnout amongst Democrats, we will win pretty handily. And I think we're on our way there. I was up in Panema last night, which is one of the villages in Red Lake. It's the kind of the cultural heart of Red Lake. They are going to come out really hard for me. They're very enthusiastic, and there's a really good ground game in Red Lake. Transportation, of course, as was mentioned earlier, is a real issue for us. But we've got, well, not me, but the political education committee of Red Lake has 20 drivers ready to go to drive people to the polls. So I think we're going to see I think that the highest turnout so far is about 2,300 Red Lake votes. And about 95% of them go DFL, at least. And we're probably going to see close to 3,000. So it's going to be quite an increase. That alone will just about push me over, but I think we'll see a lot more people turning out to vote here. Also, very anecdotally, after the debate, after some of the articles that have been out about my opponent, I've been receiving text messages and emails from Republicans saying, don't tell anybody, but I'm going to vote for you. And I'm not saying I'm going to vote for you next time, but I can't vote for him. And you at least have a head on your shoulders. And so, one woman said, our whole household are Republicans and we're all voting for you. So I think a lot of people are going to leave it. A lot of Republicans are going to leave this race blank. That just can't bring themselves to vote for me, but they're not going to vote for him. So I'm really excited. I'm kind of happy that we've got the press that this is unwinnable, because it means that the Republicans really haven't been investing in the race at all. They think that he is just going to be able to coast just because he has an R next to his name. But as people are learning who he is, just yesterday, someone told me that his brother-in-law, who is a hardcore Republican and a very good friend of Badal Duran's, said he's voting for me because he just can't, he's a friend of mine, but he can't have, we can't let him have this job. So I'll stop talking now, but I'm very confident that we're going to overcome it. I've been working really, really hard to get low propensity voters to get out and vote. And I think it's going to carry me over on election day. So.
Wow.
I like that, Greg. Sounds like an intervention. And just speaking of that, I'll jump in before Greg. If anyone wants to know what a Giglio notice is, you can go ahead and talk to me offline, because one came out for former Deputy Duran recently. Don't lie on affidavits. It's bad. Again. He will never be a cop again. You know, it's perjury. Yeah. So anyway, let's move to Veda and happy subjects.
All right. My red district. You want to hear about Lakeville? Where we have all Republican representatives, 2 in the House and our senator, and it's been that way a while. But my magic potion is wonderful volunteers who have helped tremendously. Many of them, if I look at my list of people that said, yeah, I want to help you in some way, Veda, it's 70+ strong. So that's pretty remarkable. The other thing would be that I'm a teacher. Lakeville recently, the teachers voted last May to strike. and then finally got a settlement that was not great, but better than what they were offered. And so people here really do care about teachers and their schools. And when I go to the doors and say, I just retired after 44 years teaching high school science, their jaw drops, but then they're interested, and then I tell them about my experience with politics, that even though this is my first run for office, I've done a whole lot of organizing, and there's lots of people at the Capitol that want to work with me. So I think that has helped. The other thing is we have a local issue here in Elko, Newmarket Township, Eureka, where people are very upset because the city of Elko, Newmarket is moving ahead with that water bottling company, Niagara. As we speak, it's being built. Poor Janelle, who's on this call, is having to hear it and see it every day. And they're going to sell our groundwater out of state for, corporate greed, right? And the city thinks they're going to benefit from the water that they sell. But future generations are going to suffer. And it sounds like the people in the town are also going to suffer because the city's plan to do $16 million worth of upgrades to their water systems and sewer systems so that they can accommodate Niagara. They're going to compromise and give them water that's lower quality, where treated water is mixed with untreated water. But don't worry, it'll still be up to standard they're supposed to feel. So there's a whole lot going on. It's kind of a long story, but I've been in that fight with Janelle and Gina and others here, Jody, and I've made some wonderful friends and allies that I didn't know before, but it's given me, an kind of an in with the local community, and not a fight that I wanted to have to fight by any means, because it's my well too, and our groundwater, right? It's a shared resource. So I'm running for the legislature to say I want to work on this. I want to make sure, we have a law that says you can't do bulk export of water out of our state. They're getting around with it. It is being exported out of state to North and South Dakota, and Wisconsin, but they're doing it in single-use plastic. So somehow that makes it better because it's in a whole bunch of little quantities. 2.4 billion plastic water bottles generated each year from this ridiculous plant. So these are the kinds of things that I'm ready to work on day one. And you talked about alliances, Reed. That's very important. This environmental caucus and I have alliances with many great environmental organizations that want to work on this issue with me. I can't know everything. And I'm excited to be able to dig in with that. And I see Susan on the call here. Susan, I'm excited to work with you and making sure that we get some good regulations up north, right, for our trail systems, so that we can have recreational vehicles that are enjoying themselves, but not ruining our environment, right? We have to protect our lakes. We have to protect our wildlife. So there's a lot of things I'm excited about. And again, being a teacher and having a strong local issue has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you both. And I was just looking through the, of course, it's, knows that I live in CD8, so I'm probably logged in under Mobilize, but Janelle says, go Veda. We got some good activities going on to volunteer at up here for Jen and Reed. I'm noticing we got a couple of get out the vote door knocks in Bemidji this weekend, Friday and Saturday with Jen. She's doing a bus tour rally in Bemidji on Sunday. She's going out to White Earth on Sunday. And there's a knock in Grand Rapids tomorrow too. So those of you who, I call us the Highway 2 crowd, live around here, there's quite a few options for you over the next 3 or 4 days. Just saying. Okay. There was a question that came in for both of you. Do you know how early voting and absentee voting are going in your areas?
Oh, I think we heard 20% have voted, but I don't know. I haven't seen any polling. I think, like Reed said, he doesn't really know how people are voting, and I don't either. I don't know. Greg, do you know anything?
What we know, and the House caucus, I don't think agrees with me on this, but according to what I've done is looking at people who voted as a Democrat or voted as a Republican in any prior primary. So we've got 2 cycles. So if you're voted as a Democrat, you're a Democrat. If you voted as a Republican in a primary, you're a Republican. Did you early vote? And it's almost 30% for both parties, with the DFL about 2% more than a Republican. So they're basically head to head. So it's close to 30% of the state, but both parties are doing about the same thing, which is not surprising because we don't have one of those weird, wonky, crazy election systems here. Everybody just votes and everybody lets you vote, and there's no screwing around with our voting here. So they're just voting. So it's not really telling us, there's not a red wave, there's not a blue wave, there's just everybody votes anyway. And if everybody votes, you can't see a wave happening, right? Like in early voting, it's not going to be an early voting phenomenon here anyway. So that's what's going on now. But while I got your ear for a second, you're all going to be watching elections on election night. What you need to know this year is that drop-off ballots, which can be dropped off up to 8 o'clock, have to be processed in the county office prior to the release of voting data to the state. So they have to be taken, collected in a precinct, driven to the county office. And if your county is the size of West Virginia, that might take a while. And then processed in the county office before any votes of any kind can be submitted to go on that website where we are watching. Because of that, all the votes will be tallied by that time, except for those, there's like 200. Hennepin County will have 300 of these votes, okay? St. Louis County will have 1 or 2. So the votes, when they come out, the voting results when they come out will come out instantly. So it'll be an hour later than usual or more, but they'll come out more or less instantly when they come out. And you might remember that happened during the primary, although people didn't really notice, but it's the first year that'll happen. So the usual thing of watching the precincts slowly add up in your House district is not going to happen this year. It's going to be all sudden, an hour later than usual or so, and instantaneously, probably.
And I'll add on just a little bit to that. I know I got some numbers about my district. Gosh, the days are all running together. I don't remember if I got this yesterday or the day before. I think it was the day before yesterday. My district, 2A, we have had about 5,400 votes. That's about 23%, 21.3% of the population, and it's up about 25% from the amount of early votes we had at the same time last cycle. So, but yeah, as to whether or not they're Republican or Democrat, I don't know. I imagine that in our district, we have a lot of male-only townships because they're very sparsely populated. So, and a lot of them are very red. So it's hard to know. Also, what will delay our turnout or our reporting for my district is that the reservation doesn't have counting machines. So they take all of the ballots and wrap them in packs of 50. And then they have to physically drive them down to Beltrami, to the county seat. And like Panema, the northernmost village, is an hour away from Bemidji. So once they get done, the poll closes at 8. They do all of their normal work that you do in a poll. And then they have to drive an hour, and then they get put through the machine to get counted. So Red Lake historically is the last to report, which makes for some riveting election nights because we're sitting there waiting to see, because what will happen is we'll get most of the city will report, and then the townships will report. And so you'll see a lead, and then you'll see the GOP take over the lead. And then do we get enough Red Lake votes to push us over? Now, because I have friends that are poll workers all up in Red Lake, I will probably know unofficial counts before it hits, roughly that we hit our mark. And so I think I'll know before it's official whether or not we made the cut, but it's going to be a nail biter. And I've already taken Wednesday off.
It's a great day to take off.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to that transportation question that we asked Jen, because this is always a good one. So Veda and Reed, you guys both live in very, very different districts, but with that, you have a lot of unique transportation needs being in both the exurbs and then a rural remote area. What kind of transportation needs do you see right now? And what kind of solutions do you see to move us into clean transportation?
Okay, I can start with that one if you like. Lakeville does have some bus systems. There's goes from the city to Minneapolis on a direct route, and there are some other routes you can get out of Burnsville and Egan and in Rosemount and other places. But I would love to see that expanded. We also have some walkable, bikeable paths that are very nice around Lakeville and Elko New Market Township. So they've done a nice job with that, but I'd love to see that expanded more. We've started to invest in electric buses with help from federal grants, which has been awesome. The green team that I worked with at Rosemont High School was able to help the district secure 8 electric buses in District 196. And we need a whole lot more of that, right? Those electric buses are not only going to help reduce the emissions from diesel from the school buses and just reduce fuel use, they can also be used as ways to charge, right? To add energy back into our system in the summers when they're not needed as much. So this is all a win-win. I'd love to see more e-cars that can be borrowed and used for people that need to drive distance. And of course, we need to increase that energy, that charging infrastructure across our state, so that people that drive from our area up north to go to their cabins can feel free to do so with their electric vehicles and know that they're going to be able to get a charge along the way, right? Without having to wait very long times. So again, I think we've off to a good start, but there's a lot more work to do. And if we start just by making sure all of our state people and our schools, our government people all have electric vehicles, that our buses are all electric. We increase that infrastructure for those. And then, like I said, I'd like to see more borrowing electric things, buses, bikes, you name it, and more routes. It'd be great.
I don't like those numbers, Greg. I'm sorry, I just saw that Greg put in the estimations on votes.
So the van identifies so few Republicans that the 35% is a soft number.
Okay.
So it could go either way by 4 or 5 points probably.
Okay. Yeah, we gosh, now I can't remember. I talk so much to so many people every day. Forgive me if I already said this. But the Political Education Committee in Red Lake has 20 drivers organized to help people get to the polls on election day. And that underscores the transportation challenges in Red Lake. It's a very spread out rural area, and a lot of people do not have reliable transportation. This is kind of an issue throughout the district. Lack of transportation is a barrier for a number of issues, whether it's getting to work, getting to a court appearance. A few years ago, a judge in Bemidji famously said, "I am sick and tired of people using a lack of transportation as an excuse for not showing up to their court, hearings." But it's tough if you live in Red Lake and you have a court hearing down in Bemidji. It happens very often that someone has a ride lined up, but then there's a flat tire or a problem with the vehicle or something, or the person backs out or whatever, and then they aren't able to make it to their court appearance, and then they get arrested on a bench warrant for failure to appear, and then they lose their job, and it can be really calamitous. Some good news: Red Lake just purchased 2 school buses that are electric buses for their school district. They had a little ceremony earlier this fall. It was pretty neat. I went up there for it. And that's what we're going to need to do, is as more and more EVs come online, we're going to make sure that rural Minnesota has the charging stations necessary so that we can get EVs and know that we're going to be able to drive around, and have those amenities. so that's something that I'm excited about, to see built out around here. But yeah, we have a lot of people that have to drive long distances to get to work, and we have really high rates of poverty. And so I've always thought this about the Bemidji area specifically, is that once the electric vehicles start being sold, we're going to have to wait a couple of years until there's a used EV market, because that's what most of my constituents are going to be. They buy used vehicles, and they can't afford a $80,000 electric vehicle. They're going to have to wait until it's 10 years old and has 100,000 miles on it. And so there's a lot of challenges, but I think that there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, one thing that I hope we can do, is create jobs, either battery factories, or things like that. Definitely, I mean, this is a little bit away from transportation, but we should be making solar panels in Minnesota. There's no reason we're not. I feel like we've unnecessarily given the market over to other countries to master, and we should really be taking the lead on that. So, but there's a lot to do in our district when it comes to transportation with renewable energy. In transportation, a lot of work to be done.
Thank you. Okay. So, when the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, I can link the article there, but we can just put this general question out there. Different things about what qualifies as a carbon-free source and the importance of what's going to qualify as a carbon-free source. So we need strong environmental candidates to make sure our climate goals are not greenwashed. How would you do that when you're elected to the legislature, especially considering that we got that trifecta, passed some amazing progressive legislation, which our governor is campaigning on and for his vice presidential bid as the clean carbon-free by 2040. What are your thoughts on all that?
I'll answer really quickly, because I think I want to parrot something that Veda said earlier. I think I'm going to need to rely on you all and experts on this. Though something I feel very strongly about, it's not something I'm very well educated on, and so the finer points of how we achieve these goals, I'm not going to come up with them. I will support them when smarter people than me come up with them, and so I'm going to take the easy way out and say that I'm going to rely on. But I had a neighbor growing up named Gus Gustafson. I grew up in Litchfield, Minnesota, and he had a saying that my dad always mentions to me, that there's nothing wrong with being an idiot as long as you know it and you shut up when the smart people talk. And so that's what I will try and do on some of these, difficult policies, is really rely on people that are the experts, and take their lead.
Veda, how are you going to ensure we don't replace coal with coal?
You're muted.
Sorry, I muted. Yep. I have two screens going here, so I have to find my mouse. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, yeah, well, I would, yes, you're right, Reed. I think we're both going to be learning a lot in terms of the finer points of how all of this works. But I also know that, the data shows this is greenwashing, that if we are trying to replace, say that we're going to have carbon-free electricity by 2040, we can't be getting it from biomass, which has a larger carbon footprint than coal, or from burning incinerating garbage, which also has a higher carbon footprint than coal. And so that is just, we have to be aware of that as legislators, that we're going to need to make sure we have good, hard data to back up our decisions. And the devil is always in the rulemaking with these things. We pass bills, and then I've seen legislators in future sessions have to go back and make revisions, right? Or figure out how to actually implement them. The Sierra Club, when they interviewed me, was very interested in this issue, as were other environmental organizations like MN 350. They're worried about this greenwashing and that we don't want our so-called solutions to be worse for the environment than the original. So I think the biggest thing that Reed and I can do is to be ever vigilant and again, look at the good, hard data and what is really the true carbon footprint. In addition to carbon footprints, we have to think of the environmental justice impact. So besides looking at carbon, we want to look at what other pollutants are being emitted due to this practice. So that's something, for example, with biofuels that we want to be looking at, right? The other issues that it causes, the other problems that it can cause. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone in the peanut gallery have some questions?
I have a quick question. I'm not trying to be cynical here, but the three of you, Jen's not here, seem to have pretty odious opponents. And why is that? Is that just you that have picked these enemies, or is it because of your districts, or is it because that's how all the Republicans are?
Well, in my case, I wasn't sure I wanted to run until I listened to him speak and was motivated. And it was International Women's Day. And I listened to President Biden's State of the Union speech. And I'd been thinking about it for a long time and just decided if I'm going to run, I want to be able to show a clear alternative to the other person, right? That there's a good reason to vote for me. So I feel like in my district, I'm such a huge contrast that it's giving people a choice and it's giving me a platform to speak my truth, right? To talk about environmental issues, to talk about education, to talk about hunger, to talk about social justice issues that it just hasn't been done. This guy even voted against there was a bill that he's a realtor. And there was a bill that would say that a realtor couldn't evict people for, gosh, how long was it? 14 days. They had to give him a 14-day notice before evicting. And he voted against that. I mean, that's such a conflict of interest, right? Let's throw people out on the street. Reed, you must love that one, right? This is what you're working on. It's trying to keep people housed. So yeah. They're not the best people in the world, and that's probably why I stepped up. And I bet Reed has the same take, but I'll let him talk.
I think that the Minnesota GOP is one of the more severe Republican parties in the nation. I mean, they really are far out there. And, this is something that I've talked a couple of times about with some friends of mine. Like, where is the just standard issue Chamber of Commerce Republican? I mean, they would probably be able to do really well. But instead, I'm just going to shower you guys with goofy adages from my hometown. My grandfather, I guess step grandfather, ran First District, which is a dairy cooperative in Litchfield, and one of his sayings about politics, which was similar to how cheese is made, is the scum rises to the top in politics, he would say. And I think that that's kind of the true in the GOP, where I think they think that they are such a lock to win that they really do find the most radical people to run. I mean, Matt Grossel was an absolute disgrace, and they celebrated him. Every time he got arrested, he was found guilty on 3 different alcohol-related charges while he was in office, all 3 of them while the legislature was in session. And it cost him nothing politically. It was just amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. So I really think that statewide, slowly the Republicans are going to learn that if they keep running Royce White and Vidal Duran and Matt Grossels, that they're not gonna have any shot at the majority. They're not gonna have any shot at any of the constitutional seats, But I mean, you look at who ran for the constitutional offices last cycle, all of them were nuts, and that's kind of putting it mildly for some of them. So yeah, it breaks my heart that these people that are so bad are able to get a lot of traction, that people will vote for them. Sometimes I think cruelty is the point, you know, the meaner the person, the more they seem to like it, which really says a lot about where we are as a society these days. I mean, and Trump, you know, really is the um, it all comes from the top, you know. I mean, he's just so vulgar, and they love it. You know, we have these people that are very serious churchgoers that just love his vulgarity, love the cruelty, love the meanness, you know. So we just need to whoop them and get back. You know, there's one woman, I knocked a door and she came out and she knew that I was a politician. She said, "Are you a Democrat or a Republican?" And I said, "I am a proud DFLer." And she said, "Well, I want you to know that this is a proud Republican home, but we're voting a straight Democratic ticket until they figure their shit out." And she was my last door of the day. Like, it was literally the last door on our van list for that day. And so I chatted with her for about 20 minutes and left her with a sign and an absentee application because her husband was infirm and needed a vote by mail. And as I was leaving, I thanked her and I said, "Well," I said, "here's to you voting for someone, voting against me in a couple of cycles, because they're going to run an old-fashioned Minnesota Republican again." And she said, "I hope so, Reed. I hope so, but I'll vote for you until then." You know, so there are reasonable Republicans. I mean, you look at the Minnesota Miracle, which I cite a lot, although more and more, I mean, anyone younger than me doesn't know what I'm talking about. But the Minnesota Miracle was a bipartisan effort in the 70s that made Minnesota the state that it is. You know, bipartisan Republicans, and a Republican would never vote. I mean, they kicked Arnie Carlson out of the party, for goodness sake, you know. So they've got one of my favorite politicians in the House was Dean Erdahl, a Republican from Litchfield, just a wonderful, wonderful man. And he got stuff done, and they threw him out of the party because they had this whole hashtag going this spring called Dump Dean. And they're saying all he ever does is compromise with the Democrats. But he was the ranking member of the bonding committee. He brought about $1 billion back to Meeker County, and they threw him out because he was working with the Democrats, which you have to do to pass a bonding bill, you know. And that was his ability to legislate was his undoing. So I don't know. We're in a tough spot.
So there's an environmental issue on the ballot this year, and usually our Vice Chair, Matt Dahl, who's been working on this quite a bit, would talk about it. But I think I'm versed well enough in it that we can move forward. The Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund is on your ballot this year. It's also known as the Legacy Amendment, which takes the lottery money and puts it towards projects. I have, not going to lie, personally benefited from the Clean Water Fund to clean up cattails and restore wetlands in my little bay I live in on Rainy Lake. Voyagers Conservancy, who I sit on the board for, they recently got a $900,000 LCCMR grant, which I believe is the biggest we've ever gotten. So once again, just love these things. But would either of you want to just talk about your thoughts on the Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund, some ways it's been benefiting your area? Aside from me cleaning up Voyagers and boundary waters in my backyard, all those other things.
Well, it's funded my taking students to the river over a many year period. Bought the kids the chest waders they needed, and the dip nets and the other equipment that was needed for that. And so we went out and collected data on the Vermilion River in Farmington, Minnesota, and for a while in Empire, Minnesota, and brought that back. And so they were citizen monitors and learned a whole lot. Now the earth science, the 9th grade team still goes every year and does more of the physical data, but the kids are in the river taking measurements and observing and appreciating it. And it's worth more to that river, which is a trout stream, and to the environment than anything, right? It's what they remember about their high school science class. So I have personally benefited from the program, and my students over the years have benefited and are still benefiting. And I know it funds many our state parks and many other programs here in Minnesota, wolf projects, right? Yeah, it's only, and it's not all of the funds. It's like 40% of the lottery funds are dedicated to this. And then I heard this year that there is a portion that will go to underrepresented communities where it's less rigorous to get the money for some smaller projects. And there were complaints that it was just going to big organizations, right, that had a lot of money and ability to pull together bigger grants. So I think that is also a great addition.
Yeah, there's going to be something on it because it usually takes a good grant writing person to put this in. And so you want an organization. I mean, the person who did ours, God rest his soul, was a retired Notre Dame engineering professor, you know, so it's not like he's never written a grant for a major university before or anything. Having said that, they're doing one. Yes, there's smaller organizations, even individuals take things. So the organization I had to try to clean up our Elk Bay where we live, wouldn't need to necessarily rely on that kind of thing. And we could get the smaller amounts of money to do some smaller project cleanups. Yeah. Or just not necessarily cleanups. Reed, do you have anything you want to talk about with the ENRTF?
I am embarrassed to say I was just talking about this with someone the other day, and now I am drawing an absolute blank on the projects that have been in our communities, though I know that there have been many. And it's a wonderful, wonderful program. It's a great way for projects to get done that otherwise wouldn't be able to get funded. And I'm sorry, I can't for the life of me right now think of what any of them are. And I know that when we get off this call, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think of 3 of them, but it is a really good program. I know that Steve Green and Matt Bliss and Matt Grossel are all incredibly opposed to this and are trying to encourage people to vote against it. That this allows, what do they say, unelected bureaucrats to, it's an end run around the legislative process, which is a complete misrepresentation of what this is. You know, if the legislature sets something up, you can't say that it's a run around the legislative process. So, but it is a really great program. And we continue to, you know, with huge numbers, continue to renew this. I know one of their complaints was that this is for 25 years now instead of 10 years, but we might as well just, you know, make it indefinite, because the state continues to overwhelmingly support these dollars being used in this way.
It funds a ton of research with the University of Minnesota. Like Veda just mentioned, the Voyager's Wolf Project. It's another one. Tom Gable's a friend of mine. And then I also sit on the board of the C4 for Friends of the Boundary Waters. It's not like Friends of the Boundary Waters has never received any kind of outdoor education for their C3 on this. So, I mean, this is just 3A I'm talking about too. This is just my district of what we're getting out of LCCMR and Clean Water Fund, et cetera. Lessard Sams. So, and granted, I am very fortunate to live in an area where I have a national park and the Boundary Waters. So anyway, here's a good question that's come in. I really like this. As you guys are going door to door, talking to voters on the phone, wherever, how is the environment conversations going compared to some other hot button issues that we've been seeing, like abortion, voter fraud? What else has been big in this day and age?
You want to start, Reed?
Sure. Well, I'll say that, you know, when I am, well, we don't actually really door knock the reservation. We kind of do it a little bit differently up there. But when I am campaigning up in the reservation in Red Lake, the management of Red Lake and the forests around Upper and Lower Red are forefront in the minds of a surprising amount of my tribal neighbors. They are very concerned about aquatic invasive species coming into Upper Red. We are actually really fortunate that the Red Lakes have really high sheephead fish populations, and they are one of the few Minnesota fish that will eat the zebra mussels. So that may be one of the secrets to the success of Red Lake is all of their sheephead. But they're very, very concerned and really want to make sure. That's one of the reasons why they're pushing for some of the management of those state lands back under their care, because they feel that they will be better stewards. And I do think generally in a lot of ways the treaty rights to the ceded territories in northern Minnesota, that may end up being Minnesota's saving grace, because we have a responsibility to our native neighbors that they have a right to harvest on these ceded territories, and they will be able to use litigation to keep us from doing harmful practices that will keep them from being able to harvest. So it is kind of a unique situation here in northern Minnesota. And I think that going forward and I don't mean just over the next couple of years, I mean over the next decades and maybe even generations, we are going to see those treaty obligations really coming into play in a number of areas. In Bemidji, I mean, we are a tourist community, we are a wood products industry community, and having healthy forests and healthy lakes is really paramount to our success for a number of different reasons. And so all of ecological issues, even amongst Republicans, they see the utility of having healthy forests and healthy water, clean water and stuff. And so it is a major issue. And I know my opponent has talked about the burdensomeness of having ecological standards, and he's really preaching to nobody when he says that.
Yes, and in Lakeville and Elko New Market, people don't talk as much about northern Minnesota with the mining. Here, we're seeing drought, right? Massive droughts where lakes and wetlands are drying up, and people are concerned. We already talked about the concerns about conserving their groundwater. We also have issues where, when I talk to people about climate change and the air quality issues we've had. We talk about last summer when their kids couldn't play outside. It was beautiful out, but the air quality was so bad that it was toxic. And we talk about that we need to make decisions thinking about these things so that our kids can inherit the same beautiful earth that we enjoy. And that's really hit me, door knocking, going into neighborhoods that I didn't know existed all over my district, and seeing gorgeous yards and houses and how people really care for things. One thing that hit me the other day, there were lilacs blooming. The plant right by a person's front door, the leaves had mostly fallen off, but there were still a few green leaves and new blossoms opening up, white lilacs. And I'm like, well, if this isn't, a little weird. This was one of our 70-degree days that came before, just a few days ago before the snow. But our weathers of extremes are there. We're seeing it now, right? Climate change is here and now. And so when I talk about the urgency and that I'm someone who will make decisions thinking about how it's going to impact future generations, people want to hear that. They care. They also want to hear that I support reproductive freedom, that I don't want my granddaughter to have less rights than me. And they also want to hear that I'll be a strong supporter of public schools. And usually when I tick off those three things, you've got my vote, unless they're a denier or someone who for some reason really disagrees with those things. So running on environment and my background, to say that I helped start this caucus, that I've been involved for years, and then I got an award for my work. All of that is, of course, important to me and important to voters to show that, I haven't held elected office before, but I've certainly been involved in Minnesota politics. Oh, PFAS also, and carcinogens in our water. That is another issue that comes up a lot. People who moved here from regions where it was really bad in their water and their wife went through cancer treatment or whatever. That's a common thing. People are worried about the quality of our water.
that's a big issue up here. I mean, we destroyed our own well in Bemidji because our our city wells are out at the airport. And for years, you know, when the fire department would practice putting out airplanes, it's funny that we've never had an airplane catch on fire out at the airport. But the annual drills, we basically used using this flame retardant that is straight up PFAS. We poisoned our own water table, and we had to work with the state of Minnesota and 3M to basically put the world's largest Brita filter at the on our wells to filter out the PFAS. And that this came up in our debate, our televised debate on Lakeland News, and my opponent had to admit that he didn't know what PFAS were. That's great.
You didn't know what PFAS was. Interesting.
I think it was the first time that he had heard of it, that this was an issue. Some of his allies are trying to say, because I was on the city council 2013 to 2016, and the contamination was there then, we just didn't know it. And so some people have tried to turn it around and say that I covered up the PFAS contamination, which does not get very far, because anybody that knows me knows that's pretty far-fetched.
One of our former board members, Steve Johnson, has been on the East Metro Citizens Committee for the 3M lawsuit distribution. It has a name I can't remember. It's very long. But yes, my friend Sam from law school, she remembers classmates of hers that have gotten cancer from the water in Oakdale.
Yeah. We have a lot of kiddos that were all born around the same few years that have some pretty bad birth defects. And I wouldn't be surprised if we were kind of a cluster, although it's never been studied. And if you recall, when this first started coming up back in the aughts, under Palenti, we had this wonderful woman. I don't remember her name. She was an Iranian scientist, Iranian by birth. And she was working on studying the effects of PFAS, and Palenti's head of the MPCA was a former marketing executive from 3M, and they quashed her study and didn't let her complete it, and then would cynically say on the radio or on the news, there is not a single study that shows that PFAS are bad for people, because we made sure that they wouldn't be completed, So the state has known about this. 3M, surely, I mean, they've known for decades about the dangers, and so I'm glad that we are now starting to resolve it, but it took 20 years, and I'm afraid it did a lot of damage to a lot of good people, a lot of Minnesotans.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of take that and pivot to something I love to ask people, our candidates, when we're doing endorsements. So you guys have both had this question before. When you get to St. Paul next year, and if you're able to be the author of a great environmental bill, obviously we know what committees you are on and everything isn't necessarily up to you, but let's just pretend that you get to be an author of a great environmental bill. What would your bill do? Veda, you're unmuted.
Yeah. You know how many candidates I've asked this question of, right? With our endorsements committee. Not fair to put it back on me.
Well, I think after all these years, you probably have had time to think about it.
I have a million answers. Yes. Right now with what's going on in Elko Newmarket, I'd love to have a bill that stopped Niagara and any future Niagaras, and got rid of single-use plastic water bottles while we're at it. Obviously we got to act on climate. I should probably be saying something more about that, but the immediate need right now in my community, I think, would be a bill that would say you can't do export of water out of our state. Yeah, right. It doesn't matter what kind of container it's in. And it's time to move beyond single-use plastic, however we do it, with a returnable container, or making sure there's water fill stations everywhere in our state. Do that just like we're funding electric charging stations. Let's fund reusable, refillable, filtered water stations everywhere. I mean, I think there's a whole lot we could do. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm going to be flip and say that Veda stole my answer. I was going to say exactly that. No, I think I think you're spot on. And there, I was a county commissioner for 6 years, and I was really active in the Association of Minnesota Counties. And one day I went to the Target here in Bemidji, and when I came inside, there was a big display for water, bottled water, a 24 pack. I think it was for $1.99 or $2.49 or something like that. And this was just before a conference, and so and I was on the general governance committee, was my committee, and we kind of touched all aspects. And I was talking with my peers and with the executive director of the association. He said, I saw this. Corporations love to externalize their cost of production. And I asked, counties are responsible for solid waste and recycling. And I think we all know now, or we should know, that when it comes to plastic, recycling really doesn't exist. It really never has. It's been a farce that corporations have been putting on us and trying to make us feel responsible for their environmental degradation. And so I asked, like, how much does that cost us, the county, that 24 pack of bottles with the plastic that wraps it all together? What are our disposal costs? Why are we subsidizing the cost of their production? Why don't we at least have a deposit on each of those bottles, a 5 or 20 cent deposit, so that to bring up the price to something more realistic, so that we have more tools to be able to deal with all of that waste. I just turned 49, and when I was a kid, a lot of the soda bottles that we bought were returnables. We did just fine for a long time with returnable bottles. And I think we could probably return to that. It wouldn't, but so doing something to end single-use plastic items of all kinds, I think it would be very, very helpful, a great start. And it would save us a lot of money in the long run. It'll cost corporate profits in the short term, but it'll save the communities, will save society a lot of money. And to say nothing about the garbage that is ending up in the oceans and the microplastics and things like that.
If you watch Blue Planet on Netflix or wherever you want to stream it, I love those movies, love those shows. My husband and I have a David Attenborough, anything he narrates, we just want to watch. But Blue Planet and Blue Planet 2 or whatever, he does a great job of talking about the microplastics in the oceans and the waters and how it's just really killing everything. So go ahead and watch it, and you'll probably want to stop using single-use plastics because it's really sad. And then on top of that, the one benefit I've always thought about is you get rid of single-use plastics, you go to your tap water, you're going to be forced to make sure your water is healthy to drink and safe to drink.
And for many of us, it's not, by the way. Yes, we need also, if you live in the city, your municipal water is being tested. And hopefully it's not a Detroit issue, right, where you're not drinking toxic water. We know many of our cities do have lead and other things in their water. But for private well owners, there is no protection. And that is something also that we need to work on, along with banning this export. So it's quality and quantity.
And Janelle put that in the chat too to me. It would protections for safe drinking water for private well owners.
It was one of our resolutions, remember, at convention, and it's a good one.
It's a very good one, because a lot of us up north live on wells too, and the water up there is safe, but it stinks like sulfur, and so nobody really wants to drink it. Well, there's things out there that need to really make sure that the water is going to work for everyone and be safe to drink if we're forced into this. Maybe force the cities to, anyway, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys have the resolution on this. Well, we're closing up around 8 o'clock. I just want to say thank you for both of you for being here, and to Jen, I know she had to go knock some dorm room doors. But just want to round it out with just, if you guys want to just take a couple of minutes each, do a so-called closing statement about anybody that might be watching this on Facebook Live or is going to watch it later that could help you in the next 5 days, 6 days, however many days it is. Any events you might have going on. We've been putting the links in the chat both here and on Facebook. And just the amazing reasons we should vote for you, environmental or non.
Go ahead, Reed.
Okay, yeah. First, I do want to thank you again for this opportunity, and thank you all for your generous support of my campaign, of Veda's and of Jen's. It's really needed and appreciated. We'll be door knocking here in Bemidji tomorrow through the weekend. So yeah, if you guys want to come over, let me know, or just stop by. We basically are going to have people going out every 3 hours. So you can come to the DFL headquarters pretty much any time of the day, and we'll get you a list and get you out knocking. I am just shot today, and I'm sorry, my brain is not working. Normally I can talk and talk and talk forever, and I am just stuttering today, or stumbling. So I apologize for that. But I think we are, as tired as I might be, I am incredibly excited, and I think we have just a wonderful opportunity here to flip this seat. I've been blown away at the amount of support that we've gotten from volunteers to go out door knocking. And we've really done a good job up here of getting out. We've done a really good job of getting drivers. But if anybody is bored and wants to come to Bemidji on election day and be a driver, come on out, because we do need more drivers. As I mentioned, transportation is a real issue here. But I'm super excited I can't wait for Wednesday to have this behind us. But as we get people out to vote, we're not just helping our own races, we're helping up and down the ticket, and hopefully we're doing our part to stave off any opportunity for Trump to return to power. So this is really important work that we're doing. And I'm just so thankful that you are all doing what you can to help out with the effort. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you all. And I really look forward to working with you once I get down to St. Paul. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Reed. We understand you guys are probably spent, but you're wonderful, and we're so excited for you. Veda.
Yes. Oh, Reed, thank you. And wow, we're going to be excited, regardless of the outcome here, for me to work with you in the legislature. I think you're going to do great things. And I put in the chat some events I have coming up. We are still on the doors and finishing up a first pass through our Get Out the Vote. We did a first pass of everybody, just about my campaign, including persuasion. Then we went back and did a second pass with more persuasion, people we missed. And now we're doing all the Get Out the Vote. So I am on the doors every day, usually for about 6 hours, a noon shift and a 3 shift on the weekends. During the week, I start at about 3 and go until the sun sets. And you're welcome to join me anytime. There's a link in the chat to sign up. It's a mobilized link, and that lets them know you're coming. But if you also let me know you're coming, my cell phone's on my events page. Feel free to send me a text to let me know you're going to join me. I'd love it. So I do have a very nice crew of all volunteers that have been helping me pretty much daily. Tomorrow we're going out to Queen Anne Mobile Home Park, and I will have a couple Spanish speaking friends with me to help, because there are a number of immigrant families there, and not all speak English. Want to make sure they know their voting rights. From our last knock, I know many of them said there were members of their family that could vote and others who couldn't. So I think it's important to go back. We also have the DFL bus coming to Burnsville on Monday at 4:15. Chair Martin and a whole bunch of candidates will be on that bus traveling around the state. So please join us Monday if you're in the area for a rally, and then come on out and do a knock with us. If you'd like to help and you can't make it because you live in another area or you're not doing door knocking, please let me know and we'll get you a list to do some phone calling, which of course is slightly less effective than door knocking. It's not the greatest, but if it's what you can do, it's also very helpful because you will reach some people, and you all know me, and I think can be a great spokesman. But it's also, I mean, I'm doing this for Kamala and Amy and Angie, and wow, we worked pretty hard to get Angie there, and we're not letting her go. And of course, I think Amy's going to win without an issue. But we are in a purple district here in CD2. So Angie, every time they pour a ton of money in. But I'm running again because my district deserves better leadership. I think I have the experience and the work ethic that it will take to get things accomplished in the Minnesota House. I will reach across the aisle for common sense solutions. I am not running to be party over anything else. I'm running for the people and for the environment and for our future. And so I want to be a representative for all the people and for future generations. And I thank you all so much for your support. I do have to acknowledge Greg, who has been my campaign manager, and apologize to the caucus if your caucus work hasn't been as much as Greg usually does. It's because I'm keeping him darn busy. We've been doing a lot. So I got to thank you, Greg, and Megan, and everyone who has been extremely helpful. You don't do this alone. Reed knows this. We all know this who are running for office. And when they tell you, oh, Veda, it'll be just like all your other volunteer work, not more work, they're lying. It is a lot of work, right? We don't sleep a lot. And there's a lot of decisions, and you feel a lot of weight with all the money people are investing. But you know what? I'm very glad I'm doing it. And in the end, I'm going to feel like a winner on the 5th because of all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you both so much for being here. And yes, we understand that this is how it is. An election year is election year. And Greg and Veda, whether or not the caucus has been as active as it normally is, because the two of you are busy with something else. This busy with something else thing is one of the most incredible and important things I think either of you have done. So very happy for that. And don't worry, we'll be back with a vengeance. Yes, like Greg said, we'll sleep when we are dead. I like normal sleep, but sure, that too. Well, I think that's it for everyone tonight. Remember, we are doing matches for our candidates. I don't know where Jen and Reed are at, if they brought in what they brought in. I know they're going to be given money. I know Veda's at 210 last count I saw. So we're doing $300 matches for Reed and for Veda, and we're going to do a $500 match for Jen from the caucus donation to help give them whatever last minute anything they need to help this. They just put in some. We've put in, some get out the vote events that are happening both in 2A and one that's leading from the bus in Burnsville, and a door knock with Ken Martin. And Laverne Capin just put something in the chat. She said, from Duluth, praying for you both to win. It's great to see you. Isaac Walton League is Duluth. Printed up great signs for the NRTF. That's the Legacy Amendment. And so happy she has one in her yard. We're very happy for that too. It's a great amendment. Well, it's 8 o'clock, so I think I'm going to call it. And we'll see you all. There will be a full caucus meeting next month. We're talking about doing a little election autopsy, see how things go and what direction we can take the caucus. next year with our new administration, whatever it may be. All right. Thank you guys all so much for joining tonight. And thank you for all your donations to Veda and to Reed and to Jen. Susan Schubert, where can we donate? Okay. Yes, I will we can put those links in the chat again. Not a problem. Greg, can you take care of that?
Or just email me because we'll call the meeting, but I couldn't figure it out.
It's coming in the chat right now. There's Vita's, and then we'll put Reed's, and I'll throw Jen's in there real quick because I have them pulled up.
Oh, we're doing through Act Blue. Okay.
Yes,
Just
it's all
read it,
through
but
Act Blue.
You wouldn't know the match, but that's okay. Okay, great. I got it. I know
Oh,
it.
not yet. I don't know the matches. The campaigns are going to let us know, and we'll match up to whatever they get coming in tonight or into the evening hours because we'll have those on
Okay,
there.
that's wonderful. I
Whatever
got it.
time they want to
Thank
cut
you.
off,
Thank you. Thank you.
we'll do that. Yeah. All right. All right, gang. Thank you so much for being here, friends. And
Thank you. Happy Halloween.
Thank you all.
happy
Thank you so
Halloween. Get
much.
out in the doors.
Thank you. Thank you all, Megan, and thank you both for running. Amazing. It's just amazing work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
They really are two of
Sure.
our favorite candidates. And not just that, a lot of other caucuses say the same thing about these two. Stonewall, the rural caucus, they all say the same thing, how much they love these two. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all so much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.